Welcome, Switched On crew. Dan here with today's signals around finding your authentic self. With me is Mike Wilson today. A great quote from Mike in the episode, "Who needs negativity in our lives?" Three great signals brought up from Mike. What is your relationship with failure? Every person has a superpower. And are my truths factual? Come join us and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Today we have Mike Wilson with us. Mike is the managing partner of Speak Audibly and is the author of 100% Me book series. Welcome, Mike. Excited to have you on the show. And I'd love for you to give a little bit more background beyond my brief intro.
Yes, no. Thank you so much for the opportunity again, Dan. I understood this podcast to be really about the truth seekers. And so I was like, I got to try to get on this guy's podcast. So thank you so much for having me. So a little bit about myself. I actually have three sons, Titus, Eli, and Malachi. They are 6'2" and 6 months old. So it's always interesting over here at the Wilson household. I always say I have three sons and one wife. And that is my beautiful wife, Crystal, who is, of course, not only my partner in life, but my partner in, multiple businesses that we do have. And Speak Audibly has really been kind of a baby that's been kind of in the womb for a long time. And so this last 3 years of Speak Audibly's existence, we've been able to truly be able to serve individuals as well as business owners. And it's just been an amazing opportunity that God really has kind of put on our heart. And we've been able to kind of run with these last 3 years.
Yeah, that's neat. And I always like to ask people about, okay, what was the signal that came in that triggered you to go down this path? There's, and I speak in terms of signals because I just think in terms of, hey, we're all getting this information, but we don't pay attention to a lot of them. But I find that, especially the people that I interview, there's been a signal that's come up where you said, oh man, I'm going to go tear into this. What was it for you?
For me, it was really that moment in my life when I said, I have to really understand what my truths are, and if my truths are factual. Like that difference in truth and fact really just kind of stood on me around July of 2017. It just sat on my shoulders, truth versus fact. And I really started thinking through my truths, the things that I grew up around, those signals that have been sent to me all my life. Like, yes, they were my truth, they were my reality, but were they factual? Because I seemed to, when I tried to, level up in my own life and begin to hang around and rub shoulders with individuals that I admired, it seemed that my truths no longer were truth. My truths were no longer factual, because these truths that I'm seeing with these individuals who are doing the things that I want to do, they look completely different. They sound completely different. These insecurities weren't something I had to hold on to. These questions actually had answers, and I didn't just have to settle for what I felt. And so that 2017 was a big year for me, and I really kind of went under investigation of my own truths, and that's where Speak Audibly was kind of launched out of. You have a voice, Mike. Let it be heard. You don't have to sit silent and let these things kind of bounce around in your own mind, and I tend to think that, back in 2016 and previous years, that distance equaled some sort of forgiveness, that if I just distance myself from the problems, they'll go away and people understand, oh, Mike got over it, time heals all wounds and these different things that were always said to me. But then as soon as I stepped in the room with someone who either offended me, hurt me, or someone who resembled someone who hurt me in the past, boom, those walls came up. Boom, that hurt came right back. So I realized, okay, I'm in Texas now. I'm from Illinois originally. Me and my wife met in middle school, started dating in high school, and been together ever since. And, she's a big reason that a lot of these perspective shifts really took place. And so.
Yeah, that's really neat. I like your distinction there between truthful versus factual. And I think all of us don't realize the amount of things we've formed as truths with absolutely zero facts behind them. And so it's a really cool distinction. And you said something else there that really triggered for me is the what I feel thing. It's like a lot of times we just have this feeling that it's right, but we really don't question where that's coming from and what's driving that. So those are two really good points.
That's exactly. And then when you say signals, I mean, that's that's a two-way thing. A lot of people don't understand that a signal came from somewhere. We didn't just receive this thing out of thin air. Where did it initiate from?
Right.
Because there are a lot of individuals who mean harm, who mean negativity in our lives. And when a signal comes from them, we choose whether we receive that or not. But we don't understand because we're not choosing intentionally. We kind of just let it be one of those hurts in our lives, one of those signals that we just I don't know how this got here, one of these beliefs that is what I call an accidental belief. It's like, I don't really know where this came from, but no, someone sent that, something sent that, and we accepted it. Why did we accept it? Time to truth seek, right?
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. Well, that leads me into a thing we talked about in the pre-show, which is your statement of what is the cycle of belief. So I want you to talk a little bit about, your vision of the cycle of belief and how do you perceive that?
Definitely. So the first book that I wrote, it was called 100% Me Mentally. So Mentally was the first one in the 100% Me book series. And actually on the front cover, I actually have a copy here. On the front cover of it is what I call the cycle of belief. So it starts with the world, goes over to the mind, goes down to the heart, then over to the megaphone and back into the world. And really what that means to me is that the world is constantly sending us information. If anyone's studied, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming on any level, you understand that there's so many bits of information that we're constantly kind of going into our minds, right? Coming in front of us and we're seeing it. And a lot of people think like, well, it can't be that much. But when you really think about, you're looking at the computer screen right now, or you're listening to this on your phone, what else do you see? I mean, I see the lights on the outside of here. I see my kids' clothes on the floor. I see books. I feel the air, my pants on my legs. Like there's so many feelings and senses and different things that are happening. My mind's actually sifting through all of this information. And if something were to hurt me, it would cause my attention to draw to it. And so the world is constantly sending us this information, social media, the news, any sort of media, really, newspapers. And we get to decide then what lands in our minds. What do we actually kind of juggle around? What are we kind of balancing out, right? Because what we do is we take what the world's given us and we base it toward our truths. So we send it toward our experiences. Do I agree with that? Do I not agree with that? If I don't agree with it, a lot of times it just kind of goes back out. It falls out. But there are some things that begin to take root. And we begin to really think on, whether it be a question, depending on where it came from, it begins to sit with us a little bit. And after we think on it for a long enough period of time, it genuinely takes root and becomes a belief in our heart. So it goes from that mind to our heart. And what I know is that out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what we fill our hearts with is what comes back out of our mouth, which of course then goes back into the world, therefore impacting and affecting someone else's cycle of belief. And so that's it. It was a concept that I seen the image before I understood kind of the context in it. And so that the world sending me stuff, because that goes both directions, whether negative or positive. And I can actually meet a person. I'm a conversationalist, so I love to have these conversations with people. Meet a person and understand just simply from what's coming out of their mouth, what's in their heart. Yeah. And if I can know what's in your heart, then I know what you're thinking about all day long. Yeah. Which means I know what your surroundings are. I know what you're surrounding yourself with. You're either watching TV too much, you're sitting in the wrong clubs with the wrong people you probably don't really like you back. And so you bring in this negativity, you think on the negativity, it enters your heart and you start speaking negatively. Everything, it rains and pours negative. But the opposite is true as well. Those people who are incredibly positive, you know what's in their heart. You know what they're thinking on, you know what surroundings they're in. They're around people who are motivating them, who are pushing them, right? Those people who are saying, you know what, no, the glass is half full. It's not half empty. Keep pushing. And that's what comes out of their mouth and they put that back into the world. So that's what I truly believe in when it comes to the cycle of belief. And it has to be something so intentional. So it all starts with my world. What do I surround myself with? Who's in my world? Who do I allow into my world? Because ultimately that's what's going to fill my heart and come out of my mouth.
Yeah. One of the key snippets I just grabbed as you were talking was it has to be so intentional. And it's probably, if I look back at my own journey, it's probably the biggest mistake I made over and over again was not really being intentional on all of those things you were mentioning. You tend to just kind of float along and let stuff come into your life or let things happen. And until you finally realize, no, I need to be hyper intentional. And so I really jump when I hear that, because it's something that I've had to learn the hard way.
I love that. I love that because I mean, there's so much intentionality and unintentionality. Those are great teachers
Yeah.
because we don't understand what we've learned until we either fall on our face or we accomplish the very thing we set out to accomplish. Like,
Yeah.
oh, because I was intentional, I did it. Because I wasn't intentional, I'm nowhere near that goal or that thing.
Right.
Great lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. A good example I'll share with you for me is on food. We started this quest of questioning our food 7 years ago, and never in my wildest imagination did I wind up thinking I'd wind up being a plant-based vegan. But as I started questioning each thing, there was this moment in it where my background's in electronic engineering, so I always kind of go back to that technical base. But I started to realize, wait a minute, okay, this whole game is about amino acids in the body. People think it's about protein, but protein's amino acids. And then I read this thing and watched a movie, and they're like, look, the cow eats grass all day long. What's the cow doing? He's eating grass, which is full of amino acids. Those amino acids go into the cow, get put into his meat, but then you eat the meat and you break it back down to get the amino acids back out. And I was like, what am I doing? Why am I not just eating the grass? Why am I having to go through all this post-processing? But it was this realization of saying, boy, I just never really intentionally questioned. Like, I never really intentionally said, what is the very best thing I can put into my body and the very simplest way to get it? And then having the intentionality then rippled through. But there's so many things like that in our life. Every facet can be shaped and questioned and positioned that way. So I love that mindset. Another thing in the pre-show that you mentioned was embracing your superpowers, and I just love the statement of that. So excited for you to share some thoughts around that with everybody.
Most definitely, and it right after my the cycle of belief, this is one of my most favorite topics, right? Because I truly believe that every person has a superpower, every one of us, and it makes me begin to think of all my favorite. I mean, I'm a Marvel freak, like I love Marvel Universe, I love them all, and the reason I think a lot of people either really love it or really hate it, because I don't really know any middle ground individuals when it comes to superhero stories, is either you really love superheroes or you really don't like them, is simply because a lot of us don't actually take into consideration what our superpower is. We come out and we come into this society, right, that says, hey, you should have a degree, which I got that. Hey, in order to have a degree, you should have a great degree. It's not even just any degree. Now you have to have a good degree in order to get a really good job, because that degree lets everyone know how valuable you are. And so you have individuals who, I don't like using the word passion, but they're intensely interested in a certain thing. But they go toward whatever that big degree is because that's what tells the world that I'm valuable. And they leave absent that superpower, that thing that is just like, man, I really want to do this. So I have a friend who, the dude, he can just draw. I mean, like nobody's business. All through school, I mean, I remember in 7th grade watching him all through, we're ready to graduate. And it's just like, dude, you've been drawing consistently. And now he's an adult and he's a publisher friend. I have a publishing company as well. And watching him do these illustrations, and it's just like, wow, like you tapped into your superpower early on. And because the individuals that he surrounded himself with, everybody always talked about it, it kept fueling that. It fueled it, and it's like, man, he just loved it. And so he was one of those very unique individuals who has been kind of on that same path since childhood. And now his superpower is now able to genuinely bring joy and imagination to all sorts of audiences, all sorts of crowds. And and to see him, he's so fulfilled. That's the thing. If your superpower brings fulfillment, you're onto something. So many individuals think that their superpower is something that they learned in their undergrad or in post-grad, right? And it's like, yeah, now I'm an attorney, but are you fulfilled? No. You make a lot of money, you've achieved a lot, but where's the fulfillment? And it's like, okay, you're not functioning in your superpower. Right. And I'll give you a story about myself, because I did that same thing. And it all comes down to 3rd grade. I had a 3rd grade teacher. I'll call her Miss P. I won't say her whole name. I don't know. She may still be alive. I don't know. She may have good genes. I'm not sure. But Mrs. P, she asked the entire class, everyone, I want everyone to stand up and we're going to talk about what you want to be when you get older. And everyone, the normal stuff, I want to be a firefighter, an astronaut, I want to be a doctor. One kid's dad was like some sort of architect, a civil engineer or something, and boom, great. I stood up and I say, I want to be a roboticist. You see, and the reason that my little third grade self went there is because I would sit at my grandparents' house, at my biological father's house that I seen every other weekend, right? And I would make these robots, and they'd be made out of, Kleenex boxes and toilet paper rolls, and I would just love just kind of mess with these things. And then I got an erector set, right? And I'm like, oh, and so I just loved these robots. I love building with my hands. And so when it got to me and I said that, I can still remember the feeling I got when she said, what did you say? And I said, yeah, I want to be a roboticist. And she starts cracking up laughing, like out loud, like gut buster, just, and all the kids start kind of laughing. And I remember sitting there with this feeling that if I think hard enough on it, I can feel that same feeling just thinking about it. And at that moment, I knew, first and foremost, I'm never going to tell anyone about this whole roboticist thing again. And secondly, I'm just going to be an architect from now on. And what did I go to school for? I was a CAD designer right out of high school. Throughout college, I did CAD design on a fire and life safety company. So I was designing sprinkler systems in schools and churches and such. And I never went back to that whole roboticist thing until I became a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor at one of the biggest churches here in America. And, it was a great experience, but they did what they call at the movies. Right. And so whenever they did this series, they would literally outfit the entire front of the church as the movie, whatever the theme was. And we did my favorite, Transformers. And I remember this guy who was just so mechanically inclined. And he literally built like Bumblebee's arm to move. And I remember watching him pull apart a drill and put the motor in this thing. And I'm sitting there painting a wall and like tears are just starting to flow. I'm a grown man. Hadn't cried in years. Also, I see this and it's just like, just gone. And I realized at that point, like I allowed someone to take a piece of my superpower, that imagination that I had that I wanted to build with my hands and do these things because I felt like they were laughing at me and not with me in third grade. Now here I am, a grown man, and having this realization. And so now that I'm a dad, it's just like, I have to protect your imagination. I have to protect these things in you. And just like we were talking about before, right? That quote of, I have to make sure that you guys aren't 30-year-old men crying in the lobby of a church because you see someone, walking in a superpower that you once had or you once wanted.
Yeah. No, that's a powerful story. And I can't believe you bring up your second or third grade teacher, because I have a teacher, I'll call her Mrs. S. And I believe it was second grade, but it might've been third. It's a little foggy for me now, but it was somewhere right in there. And up until then, and even after that, I was always this kid that just was a lightning fast reader. And I would read the book and then I would just get in trouble the rest of the time because everybody else wasn't done. So I'd be bugging other kids. I'd be, just bad, fidgeting. And she was the first teacher that she actually, kind of relished in my ability to go quickly. And so she didn't believe me at first. So then she gave me a test and she was like, wow, you actually really did read that book and you understood it. So she gave me the entire bookmobile of like 30 books. And she said, you go off in that corner and just read. I'm going to work with these other kids. But it allowed me to like have this moment of just saying, oh my God, I'm okay. It's okay to go fast. It's okay to, but it was always a struggle for me to not, I just didn't conform in a lot of ways to the mold. But she actually gave me a glimmer or a hope of saying, hey, you're all right. It's okay.
But that's exactly like we spoke about those signals. Where did they come from, right? That was a signal that she sent me that in my little third grade mind, because she was someone that I did respect. She was someone that ultimately was a mentor. She was my teacher. And I had never witnessed anything like that with her. And so what we're talking about is the difference between Professor X's School of the Gifted, right? and those individuals who never get that opportunity. But that lets us know our superpower is so much more, because her superpower genuinely was to teach. She was great at it. But in that quick moment, in a moment of just a few seconds of laughter, her superpower, she became a supervillain in my mind.
Yeah.
She went from my superhero to a supervillain.
Yeah.
You see, and it was so unintentional. She was the sweetest old lady then, but that unintention, right? It left so much on the plate for me, and
yeah,
ultimately,
we all have that. It's funny. I just we just rewatched one of the Star Wars movies last night. Okay. And every once in a while, I like to go back and rewatch these things. But we were watching one of them, and it was when the little kid Skywalker gets found, and the council doesn't want to approve him, as a guy to be in training, and the older guy at that time basically said, "I'll do it on my own. He's got the Force in him. I am gonna believe in him." And it's really cool, because this analogy is exactly, it ripples through everywhere. And you could see that the council there was basically saying, we don't believe in him, but somebody stood up and said, no, we do believe in this. And we do believe he has the Force, and we are gonna, guide him along. So it's really something we all struggle, and we all get confronted with. And we unfortunately do take it out of a lot of younger kids and try and mold them our way versus the way that they're meant to be. So cool point. Another question I like to just ask everybody is, if you were to give the audience one thing to walk away with today from Mike's view and Mike's experiences, what would be that one thing you'd want everybody to kind of take away from listening to you today?
Yeah, so for me, it's something that's kind of been on me for a couple months, honestly, because I started out this year wanting to be this speaker, and I wanted to inspire people. And, in the beginning of the year, that's kind of what happened. I had a lot of live events very quickly, had the whole year actually scheduled out before, COVID hit, and then that was just gone. But what I realized is, in those few events that I did earlier this year, I inspired people. When they got done with listening to me, they thought, wow, you're a great speaker. I thought, man, that was good. That was entertaining. You did great. But what I never heard was, I'm going to go and implement some of the things you said. So when you ask me that, I think to myself, you know what? I'm here to inspire to action. So for me, I want to let everyone know who listens to this, watches this, reads about this, if you know and have begun to embrace your superpower, let's make a power routine. Okay, so every morning we get up and we begin to warm up our superpower. So for me, at this stage of my life, the StrengthsFinder says that my number one strength is woo, which I get that. I'm a pretty smooth talker, and that was once a superpower that I used for negative, right? And so through school, there was always girls around me because I knew how to turn that woo on. But now I utilize that to not manipulate relationships in a negative fashion, but to make people trust me in a way that I can then encourage them at a level that not very many people can. And so I want to encourage everyone here listening to this to begin to take action on your superpower, regardless of what degree you have, regardless of what your occupation is. Maybe it's not necessarily in your superpower. Begin to genuinely exercise and apply your superpower.
Yeah, the encouragement for everybody to have the freedom to, have, and the courage to go do that is important for all of us. And it's, I certainly listen to you and just getting to know you a little bit through this process. I definitely can tell it comes from the heart, and that is a big piece of this whole game, that it's genuine and that it's actually coming from the right place. And so I think you throughout this process, you've been able to get that centered in the right location, which will certainly help you impact. I always look at it from my journey on podcasting and on pushing out, is really, if I can help one person or I can help a million, it's really just trying to help somebody the name of the podcast, Switched On, it really came from that, because I realized that it's just trying to switch that light, somehow switch it on in each person, and get them started on their journey of realizing it isn't just the way it is. There's a lot of things that they can do. So that's really good. My last question I always ask is cauliflower moment, and we briefed on this, but it's really this quest for realizing that all your beliefs might not be the right thing. And cauliflower moment is that moment where you questioned something and you found out that you had it wrong, or you wound up with some experiences that you really didn't want to have. And we all have a lot of those, but it's fun to have people highlight one that had a particular impact for them. So what comes to your mind when we talk about that?
Yes. So growing up about an hour outside of Chicago, up in Illinois, I had gotten to this place with my stepfather who raised me, where he would use the word wimp quite often. He'd say, Mike, don't be a wimp, something were to happen. And I'm like, let me separate. Mike, don't be a wimp. And that really began to, really hurt come as a high schooler, when I had that little bit of pride, a little bit of ego kind of kicking in. To hear him keep saying that, it's like, okay, I have to now go out in some way, prove him wrong. And the best way and the only way I believe this to happen, because of my environment and because of some of the individuals that I hung around, I had to belong somewhere. I wanted to belong. And the guys that seemed to belong were all in gangs. So I stepped out, right, with this belief of, if I am able to do these things, people will begin to see me as a bold individual. No one will ever again say, Mike, don't be a wimp, or Mike, you are a wimp. Like, it just won't happen. And so I went out with some gangbangers, and, I started doing things that I'm not proud of, and it came time for that moment when I get to either get jumped into this thing, or, I joined what I thought was a brotherhood. And so I'm sitting in front of this guy who they call an OG. He's an original gangster. He kind of brought this specific gang kind of into the area. And so older gentleman, I couldn't even tell you, late 50s, maybe, like someone that would be my grandfather at that moment. And so I'm sitting there with this guy, and he looks at me. And, all the young guys are behind me, and I'm feeling proud. Like, yes, finally I'm going to belong somewhere. My stepdad's not going to call me a wimp anymore, because he's like, wow, you did what? Like, to get into there? Like, oh, my goodness. And this guy looks at me, and he goes, man, you're bold. And I go, yes, sir. And he goes, but. And I'm like, oh, no buts. Please, no buts. He says, you're not built for this. You're not built for this. He says, look at the young men behind you. And I remember looking, and at this point, all their heads, that we're all standing up high, and kind of now they're all, looking down at the ground. And he goes, you go home to a mom and a dad. You go to a private Christian school, and you actually have great grades. These guys behind you, they don't know anything about that. Dad's not there. They maybe go to school. Maybe the only meal they ate that day was whatever lunch was at school. And he goes, it's up to you to come back and help these guys get out of this situation. So no, you're not going to do this. Plus, I know your dad, your grandmother, and your aunts and uncles. And I was like, no. But it shifted a much different belief in my mind of, I have to belong, I have to be a part of what everyone else is doing, to now, hold on, this guy just told me my mission. He just told me, you have the boldness to do these things. And just for everyone to know, there's a thin line sometimes between boldness and ignorance, right? Like, I was ignorant enough to do some of those things that I should not have done. But it let me know, okay, someone believes in me. Even though he didn't say I believe in you, he said, it's up to you to come back and save some of these guys. And so I'm sitting here like, whoa, a belief that I had in me. I mean, I knew for a fact, because my brothers, my uncles, like, guys were in these things. They were part of these brotherhoods. And I can't even be accepted by them, but there was a reason why. And it shifted my entire mindset. And so although I do have family members who I was very close with, they're still as grown men in and out of prison, and I pray for them every day, but I didn't go that path. And that was one of those pivotal reasons why I did it, honestly. And that just shifted a completely different belief. So my cauliflower moment at that age, my freshman year of high school, was that right there, this OG. I always call it the day a gangbanger saved my life.
Yeah, he was a pretty insightful OG. I mean, that is powerful that he stepped in and kind of gave you some direction there. I mean, that's it's really cool to hear. I mean, it's cool, and it's cool that you were open to listen to it, and it set your direction. So.
Well, it hurt back then. Pretty sure I cried for a couple of days, like no one will accept me. But then once I realized what he was really saying, it's like, hold on, yeah, let's shift this belief that I've been having, and build something new. That was again truth versus fact, right?
Yeah, really neat. Well, listen, as always in these things, time flies. Really love talking to you. We probably could go on for an hour, but as we wind down, where can people reach you, and what are you involved in that people can connect with you on?
Definitely. So the best place to reach me would be speakaudibly.com, simply because everything is there. My books, my programs, all my social media, everything is there. So definitely go take a look. And I also have a podcast as well. Yeah. So yeah, I'm always down to help and serve in whatever way I can. So definitely reach out.
Appreciate it. And have a good day.
Thank you so much, Dan, for having me, sir.